Get started. I'm Erica Levins-England. I work in the Career and College Center. I'm co-coordinator in there.
I'm Herb Kroll, one of the counselors here.
Herb has a lot of knowledge, so Herb's been around. Yeah.
Just old.
Nah.
That's all.
Tonight, so we have two different rooms. The financial aid room, which is kind of connected to scholarships, but this one is specifically around scholarships. So we wanted to kind of talk through a few of these things and just sort of try to answer some questions, and anytime you have questions, please just interrupt and do that, please. So first thing I think is important is understand some of the vocabulary around the types of aids. So when we talk about grants, we're talking about the need-based, usually based on an income. So we tend to talk about like families that have ever qualified for free reduced lunch. That's kind of that need-based income level. That is free money, the grants. Work study is part of a financial aid package. It's when you work on campus, and it's considered part of your overall financial aid package, and but you have to work to earn the money. And sometimes the students will get the checks, and sometimes it can go directly to pay tuition. Educational loans, those are the ones that we pay back, and sometimes you can get those from the federal government. And scholarships you don't pay back, so obviously those are the ones that people are really looking at.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. So believe it or not, so loans are considered financial aid. I don't know if that was, I think, shocking when I first started that. Yeah, here's some money that you can use, and you're going to have to pay it back, but that's part of your financial aid, so people are always surprised by that. So same thing with work studies is need-based, but that's also financial aid.
Right. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about those need-based scholarships. We're going to focus a bit in on merit-based. So merit, you're earning that based on your GPA, based on ACT scores, being the top of your class. Those are what we consider merit-based aid. And then some scholarships you apply to based on affiliation. You've been a Boy Scout, or you are writing an essay and you're earning a scholarship that way. Maybe you've been connected to, been an athlete, and this particular scholarship is for athletes, those types of things. So one of the things we talk about is setting priorities. There's kind of overwhelming, right? Some of you students that are in here, it's like there's a lot on your plate. You're trying to meet the different deadlines for applications, and sometimes the scholarship deadline will coincide with the application deadline, and sometimes it might be delayed by like a month or 2 months. So you have to kind of keep track of both those dates. Some schools do an early action deadline. If you apply to the school by their early action deadline, a lot of them are November 1st, then they'll say, we'll give you full consideration for all of our merit and or need-based scholarships. It's important for families to know that 90% of the merit aid that students will receive will come from the actual institution that they choose to go to. So that's important to know. Let's see, some scholarships require a separate application and some don't. So you have to keep track of that with your schools. For example, the U of M has 92, this was when we looked, 92 scholarships out in kind of a portal that they have, and you look to see if you qualify. Other schools like Normandale, they have a one-stop shop scholarship app, and you apply to that, and then they'll decide if you get any of those scholarships in their system. So again, it's very different. It differs based on the school.
I would say that by and large, though, most of the scholarships, just the student's application for admissions, going to qualify for most of the scholarships. Even though the U has 92 of them, additional ones that you could find a separate application for, they're they're usually very niche scholarships, but it's still always worthwhile to look. But most students are going to qualify automatically just by filling out the application for admission.
Mm-hmm. You will sort of see that there is, in general, more need-based aid out there than some of the merit-based. So it's just like we kind of try to say that to manage some expectations. And then it's really important to fill out that FAFSA or the CSS profile. Some schools require that. The FAFSA is that free application for federal student aid. And one disclaimer on that, sometimes I've heard families say, well, we know our income's too much. We're not even going to bother with the FAFSA because we don't plan to take loans and we don't want it, we're not going to take that. We still encourage families to do it their very first year of college because some schools only will consider you for their pool of money if you've done the FAFSA, even if your income is higher. So we usually say, and sometimes I've heard parents say, well, I don't want to do the FAFSA because I don't want them to run a credit check. They only run a credit check if you're going to take the loan, not to just see what you will qualify for with that school. So that's important to know too. CSS profile is a lot of like the private schools will ask you to give even more financial information. And it feels a little intrusive, but that's how they determine a whole other set of money. So it's worth it to do it even though they're asking about your assets. They're asking a lot more detail than even the FAFSA does. I just wanted to highlight that there is some conflicting information out there. I feel like we hear there's millions of dollars of scholarship aid that goes unused every year. I think people have heard that. And true, I'm sure that is true. But there are some stats that I think are important to highlight, is that 25% of students do receive some money from scholarships or grants. But of the students who are awarded scholarships, 97% of them are receiving $2,500 or less. So I think that I've seen students, particularly when they're looking at like, I'm gonna go to East Coast school, I'm gonna go to a West Coast school, or I'm gonna apply to some of these highly selectives, and they're just really hoping for these big scholarship amounts. And it's not always out there like that. So I think that that's important to know. And like 0.2% of students receive these big ones like that. Sometimes based on merit, you will see that a school will say, okay, we're going to automatically take off $10,000. It's not so much a scholarship, so keep that in mind.
I think the terminology's gotten a little muddied between what's merit aid and what's need-based. So a lot of time, like my own son, who's at Wisconsin, he got the Bucky Scholarship. And sure, he was a good student while here, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten, if the financial aid, if his, the FAFSA didn't look the way it was, if we had showed higher income, he wouldn't have gotten that. It was really need-based, it was a need-based, and they called it scholarship, but it's really more of a grant. So just, when a lot of students will say, I got a full ride, or I got this much, well, a lot of it was probably need-based. So there's just, the terminology's gotten muddy.
Okay, I think you're going on to this section.
Yes, and so I think the other, what we talked about, the stacking thing was on there.
Yeah.
So the most competitive schools generally aren't going to offer merit-based scholarships. So like at Carleton, for example, they only do need-based. They get so many applicants, and so all their applicants are they're 4.0, 35, 36 on the ACT. They're not off everybody. They're all worthy of merit scholarships. They only do need-based scholarships. Colorado College is another one. You just have to really check the websites to find out. One thing that's good to ask is because sometimes students are surprised when. So we talked about, there's the institutional scholarships, the scholarships you get from the schools that you apply to, and that's by and large, that's most of the monies that are out there. Separately, there's these private scholarships. We're going to talk about that in a moment, and that really represents a small pool of money. Well, sometimes students spend a lot of time applying to these small scholarships, and they want to go to a particular school only to find out what the school is going to do with those scholarships is they're going to take them, and if you've already gotten other aid from them, like the school scholarship or even need-based monies, they will say, oh, wow, the Wallens are giving you $4,000, well, we're going to reduce the scholarships we were going to give you. So that's called unstacking the scholarship. So it's good to know, it's just good to be aware that that could happen, and it's a worthy question of asking a financial aid office. Say, hey, if I apply for all these scholarships and I get need-based aid, are you going to then substitute and take away some of the aid that you gave me at your school? Okay, it's more of just you be wary of that.
So you're saying like if you get something like within your community, a scholarship like that they could.
They can, so it depends on the school. It's worthwhile asking them that.
Okay.
And some schools, they're never going to give you scholarship money above and beyond the cost of tuition, room, and board. Some schools will only, sure, if you get a private scholarship, they're not taking that scholarship away from you, but they'll reduce theirs. And sometimes they'll reduce it so I've seen where they say, well, we're going to have your institutional scholarships cover up to the cost of tuition, but not room and board. If you get something else on top of that, we're going to take away some of the money we gave for tuition, so you still have this room and board. It's a bit of a shell game. I think it's just
You gotta ask the question.
you just need to ask questions, especially as we start Because right now it's, hey, students apply to colleges, most of your applications for admission are also going to be part of making you eligible for their scholarships. Later on, when we start really talking about the private ones, the ones that we have here at Washburn or ones out in the community, it's just good to be aware before you do a whole bunch of them to just understand kind of what you're looking at. Some of the colleges are very transparent about how they're going to give you merit aid, but many are not. So you don't know what the formulas are if you're going to get merit aid. It's not published, and so sometimes it's a surprise whether you'll get merit aid or you won't. There are some schools, however, that are very transparent. If you go to their website, sometimes it's just a matter of ACT score, GPA, and that's the scholarship. So Michigan State, for example. So the University of Michigan, there's not a ton of merit scholarship, but that's a very desirable school. You'll see a lot of the public institutions that are very desirable for students from Minnesota. So Michigan, Oregon, University of Washington, they're a lot tighter on giving merit aid. But sometimes in that same state, like Michigan State, maybe not deemed as desirable for any number of reasons, they're going to be maybe a little bit more generous in giving merit aid. So they're very transparent. Other schools, for example, Washington State, so UW, so University of Washington, Seattle, not quite as generous with the aid, but hey, you want to go to school in the Pacific Northwest? Well, look at if you want to go to school in Pullman, sure, they're more generous with that. So you can, with a 3.4 GPA, you can get up to $11,000 a year at Washington State. Northern Michigan, which is up in Marquette, again, Ann Arbor is going to be really expensive, and you're fortunate enough to get in there. Well, Northern Michigan is going to make things much more attractive for you. And in some cases, some of these schools will do, they know that one of their competing schools might be the U of M. They'll try to come close to giving you merit aid if you're a desirable student for them, to make it so it's just as affordable to go to their school as it is to the U of M. Sometimes I'll see Iowa do that. Of course, Wisconsin with reciprocity with them, so that's not an issue. But places that we don't have reciprocity. If you went to school in New Mexico, like University of New Mexico, for example, we don't get a lot of students applying there. You'll get decent merit aid if you apply there, because again, we don't have it's not super desirable for most Minneapolitans.
This is true for admissions too. We always tell kids, like, sometimes it's easy to take it really personal if you don't get into a school, and it's really more about the profile of students that school's trying to create. So it doesn't mean that you're not a top-notch student, but they're trying to meet like so many kids from the Midwest. They want so many kids from the West Coast, so many kids from the East Coast, and they're building a profile. So you could have the exact same GPA as somebody else, but there's something about their demographics. And so we tell students, like, it's really more about them than it is the student when you don't get into some of those, and that's true with scholarships too. Like, it's all a puzzle there, and it can be kind of frustrating because sometimes it doesn't feel as transparent, but that's the system we have in the United States.
Right, and Madison's like,
yeah.
we have a lot of kids who apply to Wisconsin-Madison, and every year we're always surprised that, wow, this student didn't get in, or this student didn't get this other aid from them, and, you could go over to those schools that are close to us know, they track not only from Minnesota, but they will go granular and say from Minneapolis, Washburn versus Southwest versus Edina. I know somebody 3 years ago, I don't know if it was true, somebody was told at Edina they were only admitting one student to Madison, which was crazy.
Yeah, it's like the Wild West out there.
Yeah. A couple of just fun facts, and we'll have a link to this on our website. So these schools are the schools that have the highest percentage of students is receiving merit-based aid. So if you're really looking for that and you're a solid student, these are schools, and I put arrows next to the ones that we know a lot of our students always apply to.
I took some out.
Oh, you did?
I just ran out of time.
I didn't mean Loyola Marymount, because I meant Loyola Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Like we have a lot of students applying to Denver. Puget Sound is another one that gives lots of students merit aid. Locally, I know Gustavus does as well. Marquette, we've had a number of students now applying to the University of Vermont. Lawrence, Loyola Chicago, Grinnell, and yes, we're seeing a lot of many students, more students than in the past, are applying to these schools, and maybe it's because they're being offered more merit aid. Locally, so highest average merit-based aids award. So we talked about the number of students getting the award. These are the students that give the most average. And some of them are really tough to get into, like University of Virginia and UNC. Private schools, Vassar is one of those ones. Every year we get a handful of students applying there. They're always very, very generous, if you get in with their merit aid. And then regionally here, I've broken out average merit-based aid and average need-based aid awards at a lot of our local schools. And you can see that St. Thomas and Gustavus do give very good merit aid. They really work to get those students who are thinking about U of M, but maybe considering them, they're gonna really sweeten the pot again if you're a student who they want. Now, so we've talked a lot about scholarships from those schools particularly. As far as then the non-institute, the private scholarships, the ones from Washburn, the Wallen Scholarship, there's a whole set of them. Most of those deadlines, they don't open usually until we start getting into December. There was a couple exceptions, but students are asking us about scholarships now. We say, just focus on the ones at the schools you're applying to. We'll come back and we're going to alert you about some of the local ones, and they're usually pretty small. Many are merit, some are combined merit and need-based, and they may ask for financials. The criteria for them are usually very well stated. A lot of times there's an essay. A lot of times the essay is very much the same across the board. So sometimes the Common App essay is a good one to keep or to massage. Sometimes they ask for a letter of recommendation. Usually a teacher is willing to just take the one they use for admission and to massage it a little bit and make it so it works for a scholarship. Again, fair in the scheme of things are fairly small, so $1,000 to $5,000 with a few exceptions. Some are renewable, like you keep up your grades, you can get that every year for 4 years. So instead of a $5,000 scholarship, maybe it's a $20,000 scholarship if you roll it for 4 years. And some are just a one-time only.
So that's why sometimes we say, look at those local scholarships, because like something that's for Minnesota residents or Minneapolis residents or Washburn students, because the pool of applicants is smaller. So we usually suggest looking at some of those local ones. You can look at those ones with small awards. They do add up. If you get 3 different $1,000 scholarships, well, that's $3,000. That might put a school in range. If the little more work it requires, if it requires an essay, the application's a little bit more intense, that means less kids are gonna do it, so you may have a better chance of getting that scholarship because some kids don't wanna put in the work. And we do see that. We see a lot of kids who want the money, they don't really wanna work at it, to tell you the truth. So a lot of them are about getting personal, just like those applications. It's like, what's your story? You want someone to root for you. And so when you can write a really compelling essay or you're explaining why this school matters so much to you and that's why you want this program you're passionate about, that can really matter. Submitting early, don't wait till the deadline. We've had kids that are like the day it's due and then the computer crashes, their site's down, they really don't care. So we usually say, do not wait till the last day it's due just because of technical issues. They're not that flexible. If you're gonna need a letter of rec, you need to give teachers at least 2 weeks notice, minimum. 3 to 4 is better because a lot of our teachers are writing 30 plus letters of rec, so we really need to respect their time and make sure they've got time. Read the requirements carefully. Sometimes when they're getting lots of applicants and they're looking for ways to not have to read as many scholarships as come in, they'll say, oh, this person did 305 words and it was only a 300 maximum. I mean, little things like that can get you set aside on scholarships. So you gotta be a lot of attention to detail. There's a lot of ones you'll see out there that are sweepstakes scholarships, no essays. A lot of those are just trying to get your email. So something to keep in mind on that. And
never pay for a scholarship search or somebody to help you find scholarships.
We don't believe it's money well spent, but so we really say like 90% of the aid is going to come from where you choose to go to school. So that's really where we say put the most amount of your effort is understanding that. Organizations that your family is connected to, a parent's, find out, does your employer, you work at Cargill, do they offer scholarships to, children of people who work there? Does your church offer any scholarships? Did your kids participate in Pearl Park or Lyndhurst? Looking for some of those where it's local. This is the document that we've created that's our digital scholarship board. And we're always updating this. So this is available on our website. And I just wanted to highlight, there's kind of a key, the way that we use this. But if something's in pink, it's because it was from last year. The scholarship hasn't updated with information for this year. So as a student's scanning through, they can kind of skip the pink ones because we're waiting for updated information. I usually say to students, look at those because you'll know they're coming. You can kind of see, that one I'm eligible for that one. I'm going to make a note of it. It's coming. It's just not updated in the document yet. Also, anything with a strikeout means that the deadline has passed, so we try to make it easy for you, skip over those. The other thing we do is we put anything in green that's an income based. So if it's based on having a lower income, that we call it Pell eligible, or sometimes it's income, sometimes they'll say low income, they've got different things. We put those in green. So if you're a family that's a higher income, you can scan right by those because you can see that one. You're not going to meet the eligibility on that one. So there's a lot of different ones. The links are here. Down below, you'll see the Washburn one, which is probably February, let's see.
Probably up.
Well, I thought we had a February date. We have a Washburn scholarship that's like a one scholarship to be considered for about 12 different scholarships, and it's only for Washburn students. That's a really good one. We'll send a lot of reminders for students to look at that one. That one takes into consideration your grades, how strong you're finishing your senior year, what activities have you been in, and then the strength of what you write about. So anyway, there's a ton in here. There's a few that we promote pretty heavily. You'll see them in our newsletters and those types of things.
The Wallen Scholarship.
The Wallen's a big one, particularly.
Families in taxable income under $81,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or you have lower to moderate
Yeah.
assets. That's.
So if you want to go back to the PowerPoint, I think we're
Good
gonna
evening. This is a reminder that it is now time to transition to
There's
session
one thing
2.
before we go, I did want to point out, on the scholarship doc, we have links to all of these national searches. Most of these require you to create an account specific to that. They have like kind of a portal. When you enter your personal information, it'll tailor scholarships that you're already eligible based on the state you live in, or your GPA, or your gender, or your race, something like that. But all of them are like a separate account, so keep that in mind. And then the last slide, sometimes it's hard to feel like you're staying organized, so having a spreadsheet of some sort with the deadlines. But I wanted to show you that we actually, this is put on, but the state of Minnesota has created this, Office of Higher Ed. If you go back there and click the blue. This is a college workbook that's located on our website. It's pretty handy if you can show the tabs across the bottom. This allows you to keep track of a lot of different things with the process. You can do scholarship deadlines, if you want to click on that one. Scholarship there. This is the other way, right there. You keep this in. There. This is a spot where you could enter, you could edit this, just make a copy of it, and then you can keep track of the website, the deadline, you can check the things that it requires. This could be a pretty good organization tool. Lastly, I want to highlight in this document, there's one about comparing the cost of college. This is like the best tab in here. You enter all of this based on those financial aid letters you receive from a school, and you're going to get a side-by-side comparison of how schools are stacking up. It'll even calculate the interest of loans if you take it. So this is pretty handy. It's on our website. We'll also send a link after this event. We'll send out an email with all the PowerPoints, videos of any sessions you didn't get to attend. Sorry, there's a lot of information. Thanks so much. Sorry we didn't have time for questions. Thank you.